We're reading today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club from my old friend Armin Lehmann's book, the late Armin Lehmann. The book is titled In Hitler's Bunker, a boy soldier's eyewitness account of the Fuhrer's last days. My friend Armin was the man who gave the 16-year-old who gave the bad news to Hitler, and then he watched as Hitler walked into the room and committed suicide. It opens with an introduction from Arthur Axmann, the leader of the Hitler Youth, in April of '45. There's only victory or annihilation. Know no bounds in your hatred of the enemy. It is your duty to watch when others tire, to stand when others weaken. Your greatest honor is your unshakable fidelity to Adolf Hitler. It was with words such as these that the Third Reich's Hitler Youth leader, Arthur Axmann, exhorted 10-year-old boys and girls being sworn into the Hitler Youth in Berlin on the eve of Adolf Hitler's last birthday. The children were being inducted into the junior echelons of the movement, the Jungvolk, the young folk, and the Jungmadel, the young maidens. I was looking on, then age 16, a member of the Hitler Youth Volkssturm, literally People's Storm. The Volkssturm was the home defense force of old men and young boys hastily assembled in the dying days of the war. Every able-bodied male between the ages of 16 and 55 was ordered to put on whatever uniform he could find, anything from postmen's uniforms to firefighters' uniforms, and fight for the fatherland. The Russians called us totals because we were the result of total war. The Wehrmacht called us stew because we were a mixture of old meat and green vegetables. However, I had recently distinguished myself in battle and had even been awarded the Iron Cross Second Class. The Hitler Youth leader, Arthur Axmann, at 32, was the youngest of the senior Nazis around Hitler, but his influence within Hitler's inner circle was growing daily toward the end of the war, as he pledged that the Hitler Youth movement would fight to the death for the Fuhrer and the fatherland. In Hitler's last days, Axmann was one of only a handful of Nazis, including Hitler's private secretary Martin Bormann and the cynical propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels, who enjoyed the Fuhrer's absolute trust and confidence. Axmann had personally selected me to present to Hitler on the occasion of his 56th birthday at a ceremony in the Reich Chancellery in Berlin, partly because of my recent distinction in fighting the Russians, but partly, I suspect, because my role in the Hitler Youth Unit was as a courier, a melder. Hitler had won his Iron Cross as a courier in the First World War. I think that Axmann saw that as a lucky sign of some sort. At that moment, our Fuhrer could do with every bit of luck he could get. As I watched Axmann, I did not realize it, but victory for the Allies was no longer in doubt. Germany was being overrun from every direction. City after city was being turned into ash under a ferocious Allied bombing campaign, unprecedented in its intensity. I, along with several hundred other teenage soldiers of the Hitler Youth Volkssturm, was among the last who would serve Hitler's regime in Berlin, in the much vaunted citadel of the Fuhrer's last redoubt, in the dying days of the war. I didn't know it at the time, but I would soon be serving as a courier in his bunker beneath the Chancellery. It was an experience that would bring me into contact with some of the most notorious Nazis of the time, as well as some of the most decent soldiers and civilians struggling to cope with the death wish Hitler had imposed upon all Germans. Facing total defeat, the Fuhrer was now willing to sacrifice everything and everybody, including even the youngest and most innocent of German lives. It wasn't just males either. The Bund Deutscher Model, the German Girls' Legion, or BDM, was the female section of the Hitler Youth. They too sacrificed their lives for the Fuhrer. I did not realize at the time that Germany faced total defeat. I still believed in the myth of our, quote, miracle weapons that was widely circulated before the end of the war. I had no comprehension of the sheer evil that was at the heart of the Nazi regime. Yet I was prepared to lay down my life for Hitler in defense of the fatherland and the noble ideals of the National Socialist movement. I was elated at the prospect of greeting Hitler the following morning on his 56th and last birthday. To comprehend why anybody can have been so thoroughly taken in by such a deception, one must understand a little about my background. I was 4 years old when Adolf Hitler became Reich Chancellor of a coalition cabinet in Germany. It was 30 January 1933. Later, that historic date became known as Die Machtergreifung, the seizure of might. Absolute power, as Hitler has taught us, often brings about primal chaos. But in Hitler's case, it went beyond that. His absolute control over the minds of countless individuals created a living hell that destroyed the lives of millions of people in a human catastrophe too enormous to comprehend. It wasn't like that in the beginning. It all started with promises of a better life. My grandfather, for example, an old guard Nazi party member and an early follower of Hitler, was convinced that a fast economic recovery would come about because of Hitler. It did. He was also sure that Germany would be avenged for the Treaty of Versailles. It was. My father believed in Hitler as well. He not only became a member of the National Socialist Workers' Party, as thousands did, and joined the SS, he also turned into a fanatical disciple of what he looked upon as the new order needed to restore Germany to the glory it deserved. My father was an authoritarian, so perhaps it's understandable that he admired the new regime. But my mother was as loving and caring a soul as you could possibly imagine, and she too admired Adolf Hitler. She too thought Adolf Hitler had been anointed by God to lead Germany to its historic destiny as the greatest nation on earth. Most Germans did. It may come as a shock or a mild surprise, but women were among Hitler's most ardent followers. In Hitler's Bunker.